Hey there, everyone. Erevan here, and today we're taking a look at the largest Helldivers 2 update ever. Well, allegedly. Personally, I think the last patch was kind of a bigger deal. The Escalation of Freedom. This patch has come with an absolute wall of text for a changelog and some critical pre-nerfs, as well as a new difficulty and more. We've got a lot to cover here, so let's just get right into it. First off, we've got the addition of a new difficulty, Super Helldive. Having played this new difficulty day, I'm proud to report there is virtually nothing different about a Super Helldive compared to difficulty 9 outside of the new Mega Outposts. The new enemies in both factions are encountered regardless at lower difficulties, making the only actual difference between them this new outpost tier and a higher volume of enemies. Not exactly the grand new challenge I was hoping for. The new Mega Outpost's great reward, as Posted put it, is just a carryable bot head or egg that rewards 4 rare samples and 2 super samples on extraction. Uh, Woohoo. As far as the new enemies are concerned, we've got the Barrager tank, which is about as armored as any other tank, but lacks a heat sink class 4 armor vulnerability. The Rocket Strider, a fully enclosed scout strider with rockets strapped to its sides, which fly very quickly and tank about double the explosive damage of the original Strider. However, it should be noted that those rockets on its side can be shot and detonated, taking down the new Strider as a result. On the bug front, we have the Impaler returning from Helldivers 1, and this fella is quite dangerous to deal with. His tendrils fire up to miles away from his body and lead 5 meters in front of the direction that you were moving when they were deployed. The easiest method of avoiding will be to move towards the tendril as it spawns, as it has a very difficult time hitting directly below it on its first attack, or by shifting directions as you hear the ground begin to tremble. The impaler itself is vulnerable while deploying those tendrils and does not move. You can drop any high value ordnance on its location to remove it, or otherwise dump rounds into the exposed head, which only has an armor class of basically non existent. But it does have 1700 health and 75% durability, meaning you'll want to be firing at this weapon with something pretty high caliber and definitely not a basic liberator. The spore charger obscures vision as if a spore spewer was active in its immediate vicinity, but it is otherwise exactly the same as a standard charger, going down in the standard amount of anti tank expenditure. Killing the spore charger will also remove the spore effect immediately. The corpse does not linger the effect. The new Heavy Brood Commander is a little bit tankier overall than its little sister, but it does go down about all the same. It does, however, spawn a much faster variant of the Warrior, so be careful about that. I'm definitely still recommending the usage of a primary with high staggering force on the Terminid front, now more than ever to keep these things at bay. We'll get into more details throughout the week on the new enemies and how to counter them, of course, but that's the cliff notes with some day one tips for you. Now, getting into the balance adjustments, there were many, and the nerfs were absolutely crippling this time around, I have to say. The SG8S Slugger has had its stagger force restored to 35, allowing it to once again heavily stagger medium enemies. However, this slug loaded shotgun has had its spread increased, and its ergonomics reduced via increased drag when swiveling. Using the peak physique armor will counter this new drag, however, the weapon's buffs still leave it in an unremarkable state compared to, say, just using the Jar 5 Dominator or the DCS on the bot front and using the Blitzer or Punisher on the bug front. Now, you might have noticed that I didn't mention the Incinerate Breaker when I was just talking about the bugs there, and that's because it was struck upside the head with the Nerf bat thanks to Arrowhead somehow finding a light penetrating primary to be overperforming. The spare magazine count has been gutted by 33% down to just 4, with a sizable increase to its recoil value from 28 all the way up to 41. The grenade pistol has lost 2 spare shells from its max capacity, but thankfully does now at least receive 4 shells back from resupply crates. With Rocket Striders able to soak 2 to 3 hits from this pistol now, it's definitely lost a beat with the spare ammo capacity overall, but will still remain a strong pick regardless in just about any loadout. The crossbow sees a significant change, being altered into a one handed weapon, allowing it to be shot while running away without losing momentum, as well as used while carrying objective equipment or a ballistic shield. Within the same patch, however, keep in mind that the ballistic shield's ability to block line of sight for the enemies and avoid enemy detection has been removed, which is probably for the best. The world was just not ready for shield ninjas. Overall, this doesn't change a ton for crossbow users unless they happen to overlap as a ballistic shield enjoyer, in which case this combo is actually quite good. The Liberator Guard Dog got 2 more magazines, and nobody cares. The Orbital Walking Barrage has received a overall massive buff to its ability to carve through the map, seeing an increase in salvos from 3 to 5, with a speed at which it travels reduced by 40%. Overall, this means your Walking Barrage will cover the same distance, but it will hit targets within that area much more often and more reliably, making it closer in usability to the 380mm barrage or orbital laser. The orbital 120mm HE barrage has also received a facelift, now sporting a reduced cooldown time of only 180 seconds down from 240 and a faster rate of fire in which it drops its salvos. Overall, still probably won't take this thing outside of the maximum drama all orbitals build for memes. Now, I'd like to say that that was it for the balance adjustments, but obscured as a miscellaneous fix, and the reason behind the title of this video, the flamethrower has received an unjustifiable nerf, now unable to kill chargers via penetrating their armor, as flame effects have been adjusted to work more realistically, no longer going through various bodies and objects, which they just mean chargers when saying that, where bouncing off would be the expected behavior on armor and static objects. Now, I don't know what flamethrowers the developers think can't fry some bugs, but this change has made the flamethrower and both the new flamethrower primary and secondary weapons coming out on the 8th dead on arrival, as they will no longer be useful for the one thing that the flamethrower is doing particularly well. This truly was a pre nerf presented very disingenuously as a miscellaneous change, and I am not here for it. Moving on to the gameplay changes, we see the removal of atmospheric interference, which increased orbital scatter on the Terminid front. No one will be sad to see this one go, as removing the viability of an entire class of stratagems as a modifier was the definition of negative gameplay. Instead, now on the automaton front, we have the poor intel mission modifier added in, which obscures the location of main objectives when in a sphere on the map. This overall probably impacts the game the least out of all the modifiers, and will be a good one to look for when you want to avoid the gunship patrol modifier. Although, speaking of gunship patrols, they are now less frequent when playing under this modifier and spawn only 3 ships instead of 5. The gunships have also had their overall durability reduced on their thrusters, making it easier for things like the laser cannon and AMR in particular to destroy them. High durable damage anti air options like the plasma scorcher and the autocannon will see no difference here, however. Overall, it was a bit silly getting ganked by 5 Sky Devastators at random repeated intervals, so I'm glad to see this one toned down a little bit. The shield generator relay, and more importantly, the shield generator pack, now block the effects of sandstorms and snowstorms, allowing you to retain your mobility while the effect takes place, increasing the value of this stratagem significantly when deploying to the tundra or deserts. A new exploitable system, grief protection system, has been added that allows kicked players to continue in their own game after being removed. This will allow players to now funnel massive amounts of samples into one person by dropping the samples at extract, kicking all 3 other players, then proceeding to join their mission one by one to quadruple the resources gained by the original hosting player, as well as pay out additional resources to all remaining players but the last to be joined. This system will need a complete overhaul by the end of the week as a result of this, and I'm calling that right now. As I mentioned earlier, the shield no longer blocks line of sight. However, it now no longer drops when picking up the SSSD drives, which is nice at least. You can also once again stand up with the shield on your back. Now, arc weapons received some very difficult to understand changes, but basically the takeaway is that they now misfire in a more clear way than they did previously, as well as made them more reliable to fire against enemies aligned horizontally. Corpses, as far as I can tell, will still block shots, but in a more clear way. The social menu received a major facelift, allegedly now resuming full functionality with no further issues. It's too early to tell if this is completely true or not, but I can report proudly that I at least haven't had any issues as of yet. Now, there were many, many miscellaneous fixes, so let's just get through the most notable ones, shall we? Helldivers can now use stims anytime they want, even with no missing health. This is a massive buff to our mobility and survivability, as you can now pre-stim when you're about to charge into danger for the rapid regeneration, as well as damage resistance and speed boost if running the experimental super stimulant booster. Or Just use them to recover your stamina when you can't afford to wait for it to come back. As always, Helldiver stimulants have no addictive properties whatsoever. Mines will no longer be invisible. The week from hell is over. Gone in 360 seconds as an achievement is now obtainable above difficulty 6. Considering I only played the game on 9 up until now, I'll finally be able to get this achievement. The Patriot exosuit no longer blows itself up with its own rockets when fired. Allegedly. Good job, Taekwon. The bug that some of you observed where another player using a stim would cancel your sprint has thankfully been fixed. Hell bombs, when armed, will now detonate even if destroyed when destroyed by explosive damage. This means you can manually detonate your hell bombs and skip the arming timer should you have sufficient space to do so and explosive weaponry on hand. That does it for the changes brought to us in the Escalation of Freedom update. I have to say, I'm not really feeling the flamethrower nerf as it feels unjustifiable overall and was clearly done just as a way to pre-nerf the new flamer weapons coming in on the 8th's ability to kill chargers. There really had to be a better way here. Overall, there wasn't really any new big surprises along with the update itself, but leakers have already been finding some very exciting things coming soon that I won't spoil here. The patch wasn't all L's, of course, but I do wish difficulty 10 was just a bit more interesting than 9 with a super base. Overall, although the player count has boomed back above 50,000 for this update, this does not feel like the update to change the course of history back towards the game's golden hours. Only time will tell, though, as we have reason to believe this is just the beginning of the Escalation of Freedom, and there is again much, much more interesting alterations, mechanics, and of course guilds on the way. Thanks for watching till the end, and have a wonderful day. I'll see you next time.
And now, another helpful tip from General Brash.
Era Vin has given our soldiers a crucial rundown on the bizarre changes made to our gear by R&D. For this, I am ordering all active Helldivers to like, comment, and subscribe to his channel. Failure to do so will result in your minds turning invisible once more. Brash tactics. Use them or die trying.